Brothers Circus. Look at this.
The Ringling Brothers, John, Charlie, Alf, and Otto, formed the circus in Baraboo, took it on the road in 1884. Now here we have the Swan of Man wagon. Features swans in prominent position at the front of the wagon. And of course that's where the wagon got its name. For many years the wagon appeared without the canopy that we see today because it was lost in one of the transactions as the Swan bandwagon moved from circus to circus. That happened a lot.
And Captain, pulling this massive bandwagon are 8 Belgian horses that we mentioned earlier. They are owned and driven by William E. Hauser of Mendora, Wisconsin. Now, riding on top there, you see, is one of the top bands in Milwaukee, the 50 musicians of Dick Strauss's and his many Happy Returns Circus Band.
Dr. R.N. Lapard of Esterville, Iowa, owns these 6 Belgians, pulling the Ringling Brothers Circus Snake Den. Number 20. Now, we'll talk about the numbers that we're talking about on these wagons, because the numbers had a significance. We'll get to that.
Look inside there, Captain. Those reptiles. They're curled around the shoulders of the Snake Enchantress. They're boa constrictors. Whoa, pretty scary.
They're brave ladies. Here's a Landau carriage. It has passengers, Mr. and Mrs. William Schuett. He's president of Security Savings and Loan in Milwaukee and Wisconsin. They're one of the major donors to this year's parade, and they've made possible a recreation of the next unit in the parade, which is being seen for the very first time in the Great Circus Parade. This is spectacular. It really is lovely.
Get this, you've got 38 horses, 52 people, courtly carriages, splendid and regal wardrobe, and royal trappings and accoutrements of historic splendor. Get this, the field of the cloth of gold. This is the pomp and chivalry of the summit meeting and court tournaments of Andres, France, June 7th, 1520. This is spectacular.
Yes, this actually came from a Ringling Brothers circus back at the turn of the century. Now, of course, we know about summit meetings, don't we? We know about Russian leaders and American leaders getting together for summits. Well, summits are nothing new. As this meeting was a summit between the courts, encampments, and retinues of King Henry VIII of England and King Francis I of France. It was represented in all its splendor in the enchanting spectacle of Ringling Brothers Circus in 1905 and 1906.
And you've got to check out the costumes. Look at the work, the detail. This fantastic wardrobe is part of the new handiwork of Peggy Coburn of Circus World Museum. She's done all the costumes.
And this new parade feature includes characters portraying the kings and queens of France and England. They're riding in regal carriages, and they're being attended by armored knights and flamboyant ladies. Their entourage includes men of the court on horseback, and of course pages and jesters to make us laugh. All kinds of servants on foot. Hello, my lady. How are you? Your Majesty. So nice to see you. We'll also see 4 pages carrying an elaborate canopy above a princess on horseback. They weren't kidding. That's the way they traveled in those days.
Just incredible. And all the work and detail in the costumes. 4 members of the Milwaukee Ballet are also appearing in today's parade on the float-type wagon, and they are court dancers of all things. Can you imagine?
Oh, indeed.
And among the participants are members of the Wisconsin Morgan Horse Club, the Wisconsin Horse Owners Alliance, the Brill Riders of New Holstein, Wisconsin, and the Kibblers Indian Summer Farm of Neenah, Wisconsin. The carriages and horses drawing them were provided by Vernon Albert and Robert Litcher of Baraboo and Glenn Michaels of Le Sueur, Minnesota.
Well, I mean, you can just imagine back in 1905 and 1906, all the spectacle. Oh, my goodness. It was
Isn't
wonderful.
that incredible?
It really is. The costumes are just magnificent. They really are. Well, now it's appropriate that they should be carrying or leading wagon number 100. It's called the Great Britain Bandwagon.
And this was made by the Bodie Wagon Works of Cincinnati, Ohio. They constructed some massive parade wagons in their time. And this was in an effort to outdo the Barnum and Bailey Circus on its return to this country after the Barnum and Bailey Circus had a successful European tour. It was called the Great Britain Bandwagon. Isn't that something?
It was originally what we call a tableau wagon, and it was built in 1903 for $1,500. Not bad money when you look back. Now, of course, it's been converted to a bandwagon, and today carries the Lee Matthews Great Circus Band.
In keeping with the spirit of the rider, this is pulled by a unicorn hitch. It's different than most because there are 3 in the front, But this is the living unicorn float and tableau. Isn't this incredible? It's 14.5 feet in the air at the top of the Star Tableau wagon. And this is one of the 3 wagons from the Sir Robert Fawcett Circus of England.
And high on top of this wagon is the living unicorn, which created a stir when it toured the country with Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey in 1985 and 1986. And it's on loan this summer to the Circus World Museum, courtesy of Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus. And its president and producer, Kenneth Feld.
Boy, that is something to see.
Yes, indeed.
This is the Ringling Brothers Circus Giraffe Cage numbered 93.
Back in 1893, Ringling Brothers built this special wagon, Ringling Brothers Circus Giraffe Wagon, believed to have been the only one of its kind ever built to display a giraffe in street parades.
And it took a lot of different construction. They just didn't really know how to display a giraffe, but a lot of ingenuity went into making this particular wagon so that giraffe could in fact be in parades.
Now, the numbers on these wagons are very, very important because the roustabouts and others who would unload them and put up the circus really couldn't read, so they could tell the numbers, and the numbers meant this one holds the poles for the wagon and so on. From the home of Circus World Museum, the winter quarters of the Ringling Brothers Circus at the time, comes the Baraboo Thunderbird Marching Band. 85 young people formed just for today's parade. It includes young people from both the junior and senior high schools in Baraboo, and their director is Rick Miller. And, of course, Greg Lang, his associate.
And, of course, they are going to be playing John Philip Sousa music. John Philip Sousa March. Let's listen.
To give you some idea of the size of these wagons, the Seashell Tableau, which you'll be seeing shortly, is a wonderful wagon, and it's being preceded by 16 equestriennes recreating the Ringling Circus Parade, a feature of 1908. These lovely ladies come from several towns in Wisconsin and Iowa, and they're great. They're great riders.
They certainly are. Look at those stunning costumes as well. These, again, were made by Peg Coburn at the great Circus World Museum up in Baraboo. It takes a lot of ingenuity. A lot of history goes into determining what kind of costume each particular rider is going to be wearing.
Anybody who's been to a circus today knows that costuming is very, very important. Colorful, lovely, beautiful, gorgeous costumes are part of the pageantry of the circus. Well, that was true in circus history. So the costuming that you've seen in the circus parade today, and that you will continue to see as the parade makes its way along the streets of Milwaukee, are just absolutely gorgeous and beautiful.
We're very fortunate, too, Captain, to be on the same street that the reviewing stand is on, so that most of these units are going to stop, and they are going to parade their stuff in front of the reviewers so that they're going to get a good glimpse of it. Thus, we are going to be able to as well.
Okay, now you'll see the Seashell Tableau wagon, number 84, that I was mentioning to you just a moment ago. It really is a big wagon. The Seashell Tableau weighs 3 tons. It's 17 feet long. Now, those riders up on top are about 10.5 feet up in the air.
Well, good thing they're sitting down so they don't fall down, huh?
Yeah, I will say.
The Seashell Tableau is sometimes known as the tableau with a large leaf scroll because of the huge leaf or the seashell-shaped carvings in the center of each side.
The ladies of the big show riding on the wagon are dressed as sailors. They're carrying flags. It's a recreation of a Ringling parade feature that was seen between 1914 and 1918. Here we have the hippopotamus cage wagon. Again, number 73, marked with different numbers so the roustabouts could see those numbers, know what's in the wagon. When they get out to the fairgrounds, they know what to pull out. It's a cage wagon, right?
That's Betty Lou, too.
Is that her name, the hippopotamus?
Yeah, the hippopotamus, Betty Lou 2. I'd like to see Betty Lou 1.
Yeah, right. Does pique your curiosity a bit? Boy, those are nice horses.
This is the Ringling Brothers 1892 bell wagon, and this dates back to 1892, as I mentioned. It was it's always been property of the Ringling Brothers, and it represents the longest single wagon ownership in circus history. I think we ought to stop and listen to some of the bells. They're playing the bells of Moscow, I believe.
If you listen, you will hear why we call this the bell wagon. I don't think that's the bells of Moscow, but it's a reasonable substitute. The wagon carries 9 large bells. They weigh a total of 4,300 pounds. They were cast right here in a foundry in Milwaukee.
And this beautiful unit is being pulled by 8 Clydesdales from Pat Morrison of Belle Plaine, Iowa. And playing on the wonderful bell wagon is David Saludos. We've got pomp and royalty and lots of color. That's always an important part of a parade. And we have these ladies of the ring riding side saddle. Must be difficult to maneuver, wouldn't you think, Captain?
I would think. Now, this recognizable unit is not identified with the circuses, but it's certainly one of America's most popular parade attractions. Of course, it's the Budweiser Clydesdales, driven by Jerry Maker of Strawberry Point, Iowa. And of course, look at the horse, the doggy sitting up alongside.
The Dalmatian ever at the driver's side. This team of 8 horses is pulling the restored beer wagon built in 1903 by Studebaker, and it's one of 3 such hitches touring the country for Anheuser-Busch. The horses are geldings, and they're at least 3 years old, and they stand 6 feet at the shoulders and weigh between 1,800 and 2,000 pounds.
Wow, they are really something, aren't they? This unit is on the road 10 months of the year, and 7 grooms and a Dalmatian, as you can see sitting right up there, travel along with the hitch. Why Dalmatians? Well, they were fast enough to keep up with the wagons, and any fireman of years ago can tell you that. And their light-colored body and markings made them easier to see at twilight hours. And he's a handsome fellow.
And you know, that dog almost looks like Spuds MacKenzie, too.
I think he looks like half the Lone Ranger.
Beautiful horses. And
Yeah.
a lot of those Clydesdales were over at the showgrounds earlier in the week getting ready for the circus that is taking place right here in Milwaukee.
Yeah, it's really, summertime is just a festival in Milwaukee. It's absolutely wonderful. Here we have a Temple Tableau wagon. It's billed as a living leopard loose on the streets.
Look at it.
Being pulled by 4 Pritcharons. Well, why? Why living leopard? Look at the leopard. Wow.
I don't know if he looks too happy. Look at his teeth open there.
Ooh. When the Circus World Museum received the remnants of this unit to restore, they got a canopy and that was it. So they used an old photograph and they constructed this Temple Tableau wagon, and they did a great job.
They sure did. Barbara Woodcock of Ruskin, Florida and Baraboo, Wisconsin. She is the one who is responsible for that leopard and holding it tightly, let's hope. This is the Charging Tiger tableau, number 11, and it's an excellent example of the massive wagons built during the 1920s for the Hagen-Beck-Wallace Circus. This one, for example, is 10 feet high, 16 feet long, and weighs 5 tons. Wagons were built in this fashion so that they would hold together when they were being pulled out of muddy and sandy lots.
That was important. Now, if you think you recognize it, it's because it was used in many circuses and in motion pictures with different paintings on its side. It's now painted with charging tigers, as in the Arthur Brothers Circus.
This is A.M. Stubb Johnson of Spencer, Iowa, and he put together this team of 4 llamas.
I was going to say funny-looking horses.
They are.
They're llamas.
And he taught them how to pull this cart. I wonder what they'd have to say about it. But this has been unique to circus parades, and that was also in the past, but as well as the present. You don't see llamas pulling carts too often, do you?
Well, I've got to agree with that, Joe. I don't think you do see it too often. Only in the Great Circus Parade. This is the Schlitz bandwagon, number 40, and unlike other wagons in the Great Circus Parade, this is not a restored wagon. It was built in 1972, was seen in a parade for the first time in 1973. On the 4th of July in that year, was pulled by 40 Belgian horses driven by one man, Dick Sparrow. Paul Sparrow, who's driving the 8 Belgians pulling this wagon today, is the son of Dick. Paul learned the intricacies of driving 40 horses and did so in Milwaukee and in many other parades.
That is just incredible. Let's listen to the music. That particular bandwagon is so far the only bandwagon to be built since the turn of the century. Here is Merle Evans, and he's been around for a number of years, and he's the only person in the 1987 parade who has been in daily circus parades for over 68 years. An important element in any circus performance is the music that accompanies the various performing acts, and Merle Evans has also written a great deal of the music that you hear at circuses.
Yes, Merle Evans is, well, he's a legend in circuses, and he is absolutely wonderful.
Now, our next particular tableau is one that I think is really in honor of you, Captain Kangaroo. This is called the Kangaroo Tableau Wagon, number 31. I mean, what else could it be? Well, it has to be for you, right?
I've been around almost as long as the Great Circus Parade or the circus parades of the turn of the century, but not quite.
Well, this one was built sometime after 1910, and it started out as a cage wagon for the Golmar Brothers circus, and that's probably not a circus that we've heard too much about since we've been talking about circus, but another one of those smaller circuses that came and went and then maybe joined forces with another bigger circus to keep the circuses alive in this country.
And you call this a cage wagon, and of course there were many cage wagons in circus parades, and that was the whole idea. You took your lions and your tigers and other animals, and you put them in a wagon, and you paraded them through the streets of the small town, middle-sized town, large-sized town through which you were passing at that time. You had one performance, and you wanted everybody in town to know that the circus was in town, and that's what these wagons did. They let everybody know that you could come see the lions and the tigers, in this case the kangaroo. Being pulled by 4 Clydesdales, by Dr. Ralph Schwartz of Darlington, Wisconsin. In 1949 and 50, this wagon was featured at the Chicago Railroad Fair in a Wheels of Progress pageant.
And this particular tableau weighs 2.5 tons. It's 10 feet 9 inches high and is about 14 feet long, and what a beauty.
Now, you're going to have to forgive this pun, but here's a high-class clown. Gary Soule of Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, is using stilts that he bought in 1970 from a retiring performer with the K Continental Circus. Here are all the different circus names we're mentioning. The stilts weigh 10 pounds each and are still in very, very good shape. What does Gary do when he's not stilt walking? He goes cave exploring. Can you believe that?
I can believe it. In a circus, you can believe anything. Here are 4 Belgian horses, and they are being driven by Earl Pinchnow of Athens, Wisconsin, and he's pulling the Whiskers cage wagon number 88. It was named Whiskers because of the 4 bearded men on each corner, and that we'll probably see that guy on the right. That's a bearded guy.
And look at the guy inside.
He's bearded
An
too.
African lion, yes, from Kay Rosaire, America's foremost lady wild animal trainer. And that's an example of another cage wagon, huh?
This is the Mirror Tableau number 26, and it was built in the winter of 1902 by Golmar Brothers for their debut as, get this, a railroad circus, and this was in 1903. Now, it's obvious why it's known as a mirror wagon. Can you guess why, Captain?
Oh, look at the crowd in the mirror.
Yes.
Enjoying it, yes. It really is a handsome wagon, and we'll see lots of mirror wagons. The mirror wagon was very, very popular. On top, Ratster's Brass Circus Band from Milwaukee. Play, men, play! Here's a fellow who's very popular in Milwaukee, a popular clown, a veteran of several of these circus parades. That's Charlie the Clown. That's Art Petrie. Pulling Charlie's cart is another veteran of the Great Circus Parade, April. Isn't she lovely? Hello, April. I like her. She's teeny tiny.
We go back to 1903 for this particular tableau wagon. This is the Asia tableau number 71, and it was built for Barnum and Bailey and was used by that circus through the 1918 season. The Asia tableau was one of a series named for continents and countries. It appeared with several other circuses before being retired from service back in 1937.
Yes, they passed these wagons on from circus to circus. A particular circus was through with them, and they passed them on to another circus. The relief figures you just saw on the side of the Asia tableau depict 12 different Asian nationalities. It's a big wagon, 21 feet long, weighs 5 tons. You see, they're all in relief, are a little outdated in our geography today, but from that age, I guess, from that day, they were accurate.
And riding on top there are some wagon performers, and they represent the Orient and Oriental performers.
Cage wagon number 19, again a cage wagon, built in the 1920s for the Sells Floto Circus, another circus. This was known as a working cage, 3-arch cage, because it had 3 distinct compartments for performing lions or tigers with a runway down the right-hand side. At the time this wagon was built, circus parades were disappearing from city streets. The more elaborate cage wagons were being replaced with these more utilitarian dens. The design was simple. The wagon could be used to handle a working cat act.
And speaking of cats, there was a cat in there. Cage number 19 is 17 feet 8 inches long, 10 1/2 feet high, and weighs 4.5 tons. The 3 tigers inside are owned by Kay Roger of Sarasota, Florida, and the 6 Percherons are owned by Richard Lee of Hilbert, Wisconsin. And they are pulling the 3 arched wagons. Beautiful. You know, a lot of the towns after a while said we don't want to have circus parade wagons because of the weight of some of the wagons themselves would dig into the asphalt, so that became a problem. Lucky for us that the city of Milwaukee doesn't feel that way.
Well, of course, streets are constructed a little differently today. They are constructed to take 18-wheelers and other huge vehicles, so I don't think the circus wagon presents as much of a problem as it did in those early days when roads were not as we know them today, and it would be possible for heavy circus wagons to damage roads. Of course, it seems to me that that's an age-old problem, isn't it? We still talk about our superhighways and other roadways being damaged by vehicles. Mark Brower is the director of the 50-piece Lake Band of Milwaukee. He marched in the circus parade in the early 70s as a high school musician with the very same Lake Band.
And the Lake Band is made up of musicians from throughout the Milwaukee area, as well as other Wisconsin cities. They are stepping smartly in their black and red outfits, and I know that they'll honor us with a traditional circus song and a march.
The rules for circus music, or for music in this great circus parade, are very strict. You can't just play, like you for example, you couldn't play a modern song like New York, New York, or something of that. Why would you play it?
Well, why not Hang On Sloopy? Or,
right, but you couldn't play anything like that. The music has to be authentic music that would be associated with a circus parade. If you don't believe me, listen and you'll hear authentic music from the great circus parade. Three Lakes, Wisconsin, is controlling his 8 Percherons as they pull the Lion and Gladiator wagon. It's numbered 102 in the circus world. Riding atop are riders portraying personnel of the big show.
And more great music. This wagon is on loan to Circus World Museum, courtesy of Kenneth Feld. He's president of Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. The 1905 vintage wagon toured with the Hagenbeck Wallace Circus.
Number 29, the Sells Floto Circus used this cage wagon, number 29, as a leopard cage from 1908 to the early 1920s, so it had quite a lengthy life. Its bars are close together to prevent a lightning-fast cat from injuring spectators, and there he is inside. Yes, a jaguar. He's a jaguar from Willie's Game Farm in Brandon, Wisconsin.
Glenn Finch of Tomah, Wisconsin, provided the 2 Belgian horses to pull this wagon with the fascinating gargoyle-type wood carvings on each corner. The beautiful skyboard features a graceful bird with wings outstretched.
We have a couple of riders from West Allis Western Days to tell the crowd that a new section is coming along. Yes, we're dividing the Great Circus Parade into sections. This is the Wild West section of the Great Circus Parade. And these are the section leaders. It's time for the Wild West and Congress of Rough Riders of the World.
And this is the section where we're going to see the cowboys and the cowgirls and all those people, as you mentioned, from the Wild, Wild West.
Yes, in the last part of the last century, Wild Bill Cody and Buffalo Bill and all those people were very, very important.
Absolutely. We're going to pause 10 seconds for station identification, and then we'll be back here in Milwaukee for more of the Great Circus Parade.
The Great Circus Parade comes to you through a grant from Strong Funds, a family of mutual funds offering individuals a wide range of investment opportunities.
Back on the streets of Milwaukee, witnessing the Great Circus Parade. Here's a lovely wagon. The August Melchior wagon, number 98. Dates back to the P.T. Barnum Circus of the 1880s.
These riders are from Baraboo, Burlington, West Allis, and Madison, and they're portraying characters that would have appeared in Wild West shows like the Cowboys and the Cowgirls, the U.S. Cavalry, and riders from Old Mexico.
Hey, Buffalo Bill! It was a very famous Wild West circus and a great circus performer. William F. Cody, Buffalo Bill. Edwin Hill of La Crosse, Wisconsin, is portraying his honor, Buffalo Bill. Cody founded what he called the Buffalo Bill's Wild West and Congress of Rough Riders of the World. Now, that was not easy to say.
Can you say that again one more time?
Buffalo Bill's Wild West and Congress of Rough Riders of the World.
You know, I don't think you could put that on a big plaque to ride around town, could
Well,
you?
if you had to put it on a circus poster, I think you would have spent a lot of ink in...
That could have been it for the whole entire budget of their promotion. We've got more music coming up.
This is the August Melchior wagon. Forgive my pronunciation. Number 98. I was telling you about it before. It goes back to the 1880s. Its name was made up. It was a fabrication by Barnum's press agents. It does somewhat describe the wagon's early history. Originally, the wagon had a series of organ pipes on top and the mechanism of a steam-operated band organ inside. They were removed. They were never found again.
Calvin Larson, and he's from Ripon, Wisconsin, is driving the 6 Clydesdale as they pull this wagon, on top of which are Native American Indians, and they are from United Indians of Milwaukee.
4 Indian tribes native to Wisconsin are represented on the wagon today. These tribes are the Chippewa, the Cree, the Oneida, and the Potawatomi.
I like that. Say that again.
Potawatomi.
That's a fun word.
And handsome tribe members of the 4 tribes represented in the now state of Wisconsin.
And some beautiful costumes.
Whose ancestors populated this Midwestern region.
And some of the names that we've been mentioning throughout the day, Oconomowoc and Milwaukee, for instance, all Indian names. And so we're getting a bit of Indian lore as we go along this afternoon.
Well, of course, the Indian culture and the Indian names are a very important part of the history of Wisconsin. Listen, you can watch this parade from wherever you possibly can. Get up on a rooftop, get up on top of a sign somewhere. Bring your seats.
And people have found them.
Yes.
Yes, they found every nook and cranny along the 3.5-mile route.
Every possible access point.
We've got more music now, and this band is the Fox River Valley Lutheran Youth Band. It's made up of young people from high schools in Jackson, Appleton, Manitowoc, Fond du Lac, and Kenosha, Wisconsin. And 3 weeks ago, this band won top honors in Milwaukee's City of Festivals Parade. which traditionally kicks off the long summer festival season here in Milwaukee. And Craig R. Kritzkow is the director, and I know they're going to strike up the band for us.
Seems to me that Milwaukee just isn't without a parade. You have a parade every single week?
Well, we have a festival every week during the summer into the first part of September. And I tell you, if you like food, this is the place to come. If you like entertainment.
It's family fun, I'll tell you that. It's great. Come on, fellas and ladies, let's play a little bit for us. Beat your drums, blow the horns, and play the pipes, and we'll listen to your music. They deserve to win. They're a handsome unit. Here's a unit from far away. The Concord Stagecoach we're seeing now was built over 100 years ago by Abbott Downing in Concord, New Hampshire, New England, as part of the Great Circus Parade. It was featured on Buffalo Bill's Wild West show at the turn of the century, being pulled by 4 horses guided by Harold Krieger of Sparta, Wisconsin. Oh, look at the mail coach. Isn't it really a handsome coach?
Absolutely beautiful.
Yep.
And I wonder if the mail was any quicker then as it is now.
I'm not going to answer, Joe. Oh, here's a
well, now, what's
wagon.
a Wild West section without a covered wagon? It originally belonged to the 101 Ranch Real Wild. These are difficult to say when you get two W's together. Real Wild West Show, Buffalo Bill's principal competitor. The wagon is being pulled by 2 oxen and driven by Charles Robb of Arena, Wisconsin.
Now, we've seen horses, we've seen llama, we're going to see some elephants. Here we see some oxen, and we saw a little pony. Look at these Wild West riders.
They are, and they are certainly beautiful with some beautiful outfits. They are the Wild West Riders from Milwaukee.
This, we remind you, is the Wild West section of the Great Circus Parade. The Wild West was very important to circuses at the turn of the century. 4 Percherons owned and driven by Ray Bast of Richfield, Wisconsin, are pulling the Sparks Circus, another circus, Sparks Circus Sea Serpent tableau. It was numbered 33, built around 1910. The main theme of the carvings on both sides of the wagon are sea serpents.
And the Joseph Schlitz Brewing Company, who sponsored the Great Circus Parade back in the 60s and 70s, acquired this wagon in 1964 and presented it to the Circus World Museum. Beautiful, beautiful wagon.
See, there are the sea serpents that I was referring to.
Look at the detail in the work.
I mean, the incredible work on these circus wagons. They're just wonderful. And of course, they've all been restored and in many cases recreated by the Circus World Museum in Baraboo. So if you ever get anywhere near Baraboo, you've got to go to the Circus World Museum. You will love well, not just the wagons, but everything else of circus lore that exists for families to really enjoy.
And you know, Captain, sometimes all they have to work on restoring them is maybe an old photograph, an old black and white photograph.
And
is
they go
all
from
they
there,
have.
and they do very well. This is what's known as a stringer wagon. They carried sections of the circus portable seats, the seats that we sit on. And they served well as a moving stage in the street parade. And look, aboard the wagon are Gilbert and Jones and Company, Troop of Clowns, and James Herndon's Dixieland Band of Chicago.
They are wild. They're getting ready to perform for us. It's being pulled by 6 Percherons. Those Percherons have been really working double duty today. And the horses are owned by Robert L. Fies of Lewisburg, Ohio. This is cage number 85. It's one of the most ornate of the cage wagons we'll be seeing today. The decorative wooden framework gives the appearance of 2 picture frames on each side with large scalloped edges. Look at those sunburst wheels. They're pretty interesting. And they're different than on most circus wagons. Absolutely gorgeous.
They really are. And you noticed inside the wagon, well, there are 2 tigers in there from Willie's Game Farm in Wisconsin, being pulled by 6 handsome Clydesdale horses. But you can see what cage wagons did do, of course. They brought the animals to the streets, and everybody said, "Ooh, tiger, I got to get out to the circus grounds to see those animals."
But they had to also be careful in the different types of bars that they used, because some of those lions and some of those tigers could go right through those cages.
Not just some of them, every one of them you had to be careful with them all.
Pretty wild. We've got the France Bandwagon number 41. This happened back in 1917 and 18 from those Master Wagon Works of Cincinnati, and they actually built 16 wagons during that period.
And it really is a beautiful wagon. This France Bandwagon is one of those 16. France is the only one of the original group of 16 still in existence as far as we know. Of course, it's a modern trend, those drawings, those representations on the side, carvings or composites of coats of arms and other pieces identifying the wagons with the particular countries they represent.
Roland Ruby of Brookfield, which is a Milwaukee suburb, is pulling the France Bandwagon number 41, which is 19 feet 4 inches long and 10 feet 2 inches high and weighs 4 tons.
Incidentally, Joe Smith, it cost $2,000 in 1916. Okay?
Well, there I see Joan of Arc, and she is riding a white horse, and this is actually Teresa von Ruden of Juneau, Wisconsin, and she is portraying a young Joan of Arc, the famous heroine and patron saint of France.
You can gather we're into another section of the parade now. This the medieval section of the parade. Mounted knights in shining armor, such as we're seeing now, were frequent features of circus parades a century ago. There are 14 riders here. They're portraying knights of St. John's regal army of royal France.
We got kind of a glimpse of this type of costume a little bit earlier with the Field of Gold, and we're seeing really different tones and different colors with this particular event, the Mounted Knights.
It's an example of pageantry, which was so important in the circus. The riders are members of the Crystal Creek Riders of Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, reinforced with riders from Juneau, New Holstein, and Baraboo.
This is considered one of the most bizarre wagons ever built. This is the golden age of chivalry, more commonly known as the Dragon Wagon.
Say it again.
The Dragon Wagon. It's being pulled by 6 Percherons, driven by Pete Lippett of Alpharette, Georgia. And it was one of a few wagons built exclusively for parade use. Look at that. Is that a bit gaudy or what?
Look at the dragons. Lady Olympia is being portrayed by Roberta Ingracia of Rockford, Illinois. It's another of those wagons paraded by Barnum and Bailey Circus on their return to America after a great big triumphal tour of Europe. Look at those dragons.
So I guess the golden age of chivalry isn't dead.
I would say.
It lives. It continues.
Everything but the steam coming out of the mouths of those dragons. I think I am in need of St. George. St. George, I have a dragon to slay. Well, these people are being well rewarded. As we mentioned before, some of the spectators, a substantial number of them, found their place on the streets of Milwaukee, their place of to view the parade, beginning last evening. Some of these people have been here for 15, 16, almost 20 hours with their canvas chairs and their little box of goodies and coolers, refreshments to sustain themselves in this long wait.
Do you know last night...
wait, look at these people up here. Look at this.
They've got a bird's eye view, don't they?
Way up on top.
Last night I saw people actually, and this is true, they were pitching tents. So they actually set up tents so that they could sleep overnight. And I thought to myself, well, you know, if everybody set up a tent here, I mean, there wouldn't be room for all of these people. But pretty incredible what people will do in order to get a space.
Well, of course, we have Bastille Days going on concurrently with the Great Circus Parade in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So if you did come down to the streets at that late hour, you were able to enjoy the many benefits of Bastille Day under the tents and the wonderful, colorful tents. And then you had a wonderful fireworks show last night, which you, Joe Smith, told most of Milwaukee all about, and it was a spectacular show. I mean, they were just marvelous fireworks.
And called Circus in the Sky, and a different type of fireworks, very brilliant. And hopefully sometime we'll be able to bring that to the rest of the country as well.
It was a beautiful show. Well, here we have the busiest summer band in the parade. It's got to be the busiest summer band in the parade. The South Milwaukee Senior High School Rocket Marching Band, under the direction of Sharon Arwey. And tell them why they're busy.
They're busy because they won many trophies, because they perform in so many parades rather, and they also are a concert band and a marching band. So they've won many trophies for just their appearance alone, let alone their wonderful playing that we're going to hear now.
And they really do. They just spend all their time performing at this time of year, now that the school is out. They travel a lot, and they win many awards. They're a terrific band. So come on, fellas and girls, let's see why we've been talking so about you. Hi.
This is number 81, cage number 81, and it's one on which Ernest Borgnine rode in the 1970 parade when he made his first appearance ever as a circus clown. Cage number 81 was built in the 1920s for Howe's Great London Circus, which despite its name was an American circus. Now, after traveling with some other circuses, it was shipped to Hollywood for rental to the movie studios before winding up at Circus World Museum in Baraboo, Wisconsin.
And of course, Ernie Borgnine has been back as a wonderful clown year after year after year with his lovely wife, Tova.
This is the Gladiator Telescoping Tableau. It's one of a group of wagons once owned by the Sir Robert Fawcett Circus of England. And these wagons were found rotting in a barn before being brought to the Circus World Museum in 1969, and then it started to be restored. Isn't that beautiful?
It is a beautiful wagon. There are 6 Belgians, John Carlson's 6 Belgians, pulling this tall wagon. It was one of the most difficult wagons to restore, and that's easy to see why. What work!
The carvings on the Gladiator include 5 scenes of Roman gladiators in mortal combat, 2 on each side and 1 in the rear. There are also several carved lions, dragons, and even some human figures.
Here we have the Knights of Templar of the Crusades. It's said that they never asked how many. They only said, where are they? Here we come.
And they are fearless, aren't they?
Yes.
And they are from Menominee Falls. They are from the Menominee Falls Saddle Club of where else but Menominee Falls, Wisconsin.
The Knights of Templar.
More beautiful costumes as well.
Yes. Pageantry, pageantry, pageantry. What do you need for... You need 3 things for a circus parade.
What do you need?
Pageantry, pageantry, pageantry.
We're on number 62 right now. It's the Columbia Bandwagon, and it has a long, distinguished history dating back to 1902 when it was built for the Four Paw Cells Circus. Barnum and Bailey used it from 1908 to 1918, and the Christie Brothers Circus bought it in 1927 and then sold it to the Cole Brothers Circus in 1935. Pay attention because there'll be a quiz later.
Right. Well, that's very typical. These wagons were passed on from circus to circus. Any given wagon might have been with 5, 8, 10, 15 circuses during its lifetime. And remember again, those numbers that we keep referring to had a practical purpose. They told the roustabouts who could not read what was in each particular wagon, and so they were able to identify the wagon that held the canvas, the wagon that held the seats, the stringers, the wagon that held the poles, whatever. So they were very, very important.
And riding atop is Professor Jerry Stitch and his Baraboo Circus Band. Here is Dr. H. Nichols Muller. He's the 3rd, by the way, and he's riding in this carriage. Dr. Muller is director of the State Historical Society of Wisconsin, and riding with him is Carol Muller.
This unicorn hitch is comprised of 3 Belgian horses owned by Holden Hankey of Cashton, Wisconsin. It's a different configuration than one is accustomed to seeing with these large draft horses.
Barnum and Bailey and Hutchinson Circus. Now that's one that we haven't heard before. Had cage number 61 built back in 1881. It's one of a group of 12 tableau dens built in the 1800s. Now the term cage tableau means that one side is permanently closed and the other side can be opened to reveal the barred cage with, of course, a ferocious lion or tiger inside.
Howe's cage wagon, numbered 82, is another smaller wagon. It only weighs 1.5 tons, only 1.5 tons. It's about 15 feet long, a little over 10 feet high. It's a cage wagon.
So this is kind of the baby of the wagons, I guess, only weighing 1 ton. And these 4 Percherons are driven by Lloyd Stokeland, and he's from Menominee, Wisconsin, and they're pulling these precious cargo inside.
On to wagon number 55, Walter L. Main's Circus Band Organ Wagon. Dr. Catherine Darr of Coshocton, Ohio, is driving 6 Belgian draft horses. They're pulling the Walter Main Circus Band Organ. This beautiful red and silver wagon, built in 1902 to carry a steam calliope, although the circus folk would say calliope, for the Shells and Downs Circus originally. And here is number 55.
Right, and later it was replaced by a band organ, music which is produced by a pneumatic system, kind of like the old player pianos. Remember those?
Here, this wagon is numbered 25. It's a 2-arch cage wagon. Came from Universal Movie Studios, used in many movies and TV shows, last being seen on the CBS series Frontier Circus. One of the most massive cage wagons ever built, was used only on railroad circuses.
Keith Woodbury's 6 Belgian horses are pulling wagon number 25 with 2 lions from Willie's Game Farm.
Number 25 has compartments for the animals with a runway down the right side. It was used on the Hagenbeck Wallace Circus from 1935 until 1938. Weighs 3 tons, I'll tell you. Here's a Royal Mail Coach.
Right, the Royal Mail Coach, and this is from the Sir Robert Fawcett Circus of England, and this comes from the original Royal Mail Coach from about 1850, and on top are riders of bonny old England.
Okay, here we have a handsome wagon.
These are life-size carvings of ladies in the corners, giving the name to the Beauty Tableau wagon number 89. It's being pulled today by 6 Clydesdale horses, and serenading the people along the streets of Milwaukee is Bill Sanders' Dixieland Band.
Originally, this wagon, built in the late 1890s, was a cage wagon adorned with 4 car figures. Then it was remodeled and the 2 center figures were added. Hey, listen to them.
Getting a nice round of applause.
Well,
from the audience.
This music, Dixieland, was a very important part of our country in the circus days.
Now here is another group that we haven't mentioned before. It's the Golden Brothers, and they were a relatively obscure circus touring the country in the early 1900s. And this circus tableau wagon is number 34. It's the only one in the Circus World Museum collection from the Golden Brothers.
And restored from black and white photographs. That's all they had to work with. Typical of smaller circus wagons. Hey, this high walking clown on stilts is Walter Never Falter Jankowski, walking the entire 3.5-mile parade route, some 10 feet up in the air. He's got a bird's eye view of the circus wagon and the hundreds of thousands, the million people lining the parade route. I'll tell you, I think his tailor has a problem. Sam, you didn't make the pants too long for him, let me tell you.
We have the Lion and Tiger Tableau number 44. This is another wagon that was originally built as a cage wagon. The Goldmer Brothers Circus of Baraboo had it built at, about 1910. It's being pulled today by 4 Belgian horses, and they are driven by Elroy Brass of Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin.
The Lion and Tiger gets his name from the large diamond-shaped painting of a lion and a lioness on one side of the wagon and a snarling tiger on the other.
Do that snarl.
I don't know whether that's the lion or the tiger.
That sounds good. Sounds scary.
of course,
Something that isn't scary are the clowns, though.
yeah, in addition to all the wagons and all the spectacle, all the great riders and so on, we have lots of walking clowns, including, of course, the great Ernest Borgnine and many of his companions. And, of course, everybody just loves a clown. And everybody waves and says, look, look, look. There again, your geography, the lake, Lake Michigan, and lovely Wisconsin Avenue, on which the parade is making its way for everyone to see, all of us across the nation through the facilities of public television to share this great treasure of Wisconsin. And we're particularly happy that around the world, members of our armed forces will be able to see the Great Circus Parade because it's being seen on the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service.
Here comes the Eisenhower High School Marching Band. They're from New Berlin, Wisconsin, and that's just a little bit west of Milwaukee. And in the Great Circus Parade, bands, as we've mentioned, must play traditional circus music. So, of course, our band from Milwaukee is going to be playing hopefully a John Philip Sousa march or something like that to get us in the mood.
The mix of music in a circus parade is wonderful. The music that was created specifically for the circus parade, the Sousa music, the Dixieland music. It really is American music on parade, American music of the era of the circus parade, the late century, the late 19th century, early 20th century music. So maybe they'll play for us.
And it's music, once you hear it, it brings back a lot of memories. Maybe when you were a child of being in that circus tent, and well, you get the smell of the elephants and the roar of the lion, and everyone coming out to the three rings to put on one heck of a show.
Absolutely, and I do remember the circus under the big top. I was fortunate enough to see the great Ringling Circus under the big top, and way back in Brooklyn, New York. I won't tell you how many years ago.
Well, I remember seeing it in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Well, it was part of the American experience, no matter where you live. Let's listen to them. Tally-ho! This open-topped wagon has 3 rows of seats, white high wheels. It was used to shuttle personnel in addition to being used as a bandwagon in the parade. Small wagon, doesn't weigh that much, pulled by 8 ponies.
The Norris and Rose Circus was a very small circus, and their books didn't balance too well, and they couldn't really afford a large bandwagon like we've seen today in the parade, so they bought a commercial vehicle, commonly known, as you mentioned, the Tally-ho, and they just painted it red and stuck their name on the side. Pretty ingenious. This is cage wagon number 23, and it's another of the Terrell Jacobs miniature cage wagons. It paraded for the Hagenbeck Wallace Circus and is being pulled today by 6 Percheron horses owned by Ralph Coddington of Indianapolis, Indiana. And it carries 3 lions from Kay Rosar's Wild Animal Act of Sarasota, Florida. Beautiful, beautiful animals.
Well, we've seen various sections of the parade. We saw the medieval section of the parade, the Wild West section of the parade. Huh? Well, now we come to a section that I think everybody young will certainly enjoy, and those who are young in heart. It's the children's section of the parade, and we're going to see lots of fairy tale characters. These characters were an important part of circus parades, an important part of the circus, as they still are.
Leading off this section of the parade is the Italian Royal Bandwagon. The history that's been turned up on this particular wagon indicates that this wagon was bought by the Fawcett Circus from another English circus, who in turn had bought it from an Italian circus. As far as it can be determined, the Italian circuses never had any street parades. But they had a bandwagon that went around the streets anyway to advertise the upcoming performance.
The Royal Italian Circus wagon is being pulled by 8 ponies. Riding along in this 13 feet, 9-inch high long vehicle is Mel's Clown Band of Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Coming up in just a few days here in Milwaukee is Festa Italiana, and riding in this carriage, Mr. Henry Piano, president of the Italian Community Center in Festa Italiana, and his wife, Joanne. The Italian Community Center provides the grounds for the circus events that we showed you before, the assembly of the Great Circus Parade.
Well, this is something everyone is going to love. 3 of the wagons in today's parade share a common history. This is the first of 3. This is the Cinderella float. Between 1882 and 1887, 7 pony-drawn parade floats were built for the Barnum and London Circus. Only 3 of the 7 survive, and all 3 are at the Circus World Museum. Look at these.
It's a wagon pulled by 6 ponies. This float and the Mother Goose float, which you'll see later on in the parade, were in Europe with Barnum and Bailey for 5 seasons at the turn of this century. And just as the circuses of yesteryear tried to give their parades an international flavor, so does the Great Circus Parade. This hand-carved Sicilian festival cart is driven by its owner, Antonio Lo Piparo. And he operates a restaurant in Milwaukee, riding with him, his wife and his grandson. His grandson must be just having a wonderful time. I think that's just a great thing for a grandson to be doing on a nice summer day.
And of course he's enjoying it, and something that he's going to be passing on to his friends, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's
Carts
right.
such as these first appeared in Sicily in the 14th century and were used by merchants to carry goods. Now, today they're used, of course, primarily for decorations and for parades like this. And they're absolutely beautiful. The parade is on time today. The parade started at, 2 o'clock our time and is moving along swiftly. You know, we were talking about the clowns earlier, Captain, and the clowns have a history of their own in the particular makeup that they wear, and we're seeing a variety of that today.
All right, Joe, here I go. You're going to have to forgive me on this one. The Ashwaubenon High School Band of high school youngsters, and they make good music, and I'm sure they play better than I can pronounce their name. But it's an example.
It's got a great sound, though, doesn't it?
An example of one of those Indian names, part of our great culture in the Midwest, throughout the nation.
And it's interesting, as we have watched a lot of the bands parade past today, all the different costumes, but quite a few of them have a central theme running through them, and that being hats. A lot of the bands wearing hats, and wide-brimmed hats at that.
They're a handsome band. They're a big band. Okay, why don't you play for us, everybody, and we'll listen. Here they go!
Circus performers are part of the attraction at Circus World Museum that we've been talking so much about in Baraboo, and one of the popular performers in the daily shows is our next parade attraction, and that's Happy the Clown with his friend Patch.
Oh, Mother Goose, the second of those 3 fairy tale floats that we were telling you about. Just a short while ago, we saw Cinderella. Unlike the large wagons we've been seeing and we'll see more of, these wagons are small wagons. They don't weigh very much, and they're not all that big.
And they're all pulled by ponies, and these are owned by Hartsoe Bloomstrand of Dwight, Illinois. Here are 6 ponies, and they're being driven by Stanley Piper of Grant Park, Illinois, and they pull the Old Woman in the Shoe float, the third of the 3 fairy tale floats that we've been talking about. Miss Catherine Ingracias of Rockford, Illinois, is portraying the Old Woman.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, didn't know what to do. So that's a lovely part of this section of the Great Circus Parade, fairy tales. Now's the time for the Brookfield East Marching Spartans. They make their way down the thoroughfares of Milwaukee. John Hibler is the director. They're high school young people. They're playing Officer of the Day. Well, they're not playing right now. Come on, fellas, girls, ladies and gentlemen. Let's hear some music. I just sit here, Joe, and I tap my feet. I mean, you can't help it, you know. And a lot of the folks along the parade route are clapping their hands. All right, let's listen to them.
We've got more clowns, but I've got to ask you a question. Which one is the clown, the mule or the person riding on top?
They're both having enough fun to be a clown.
That's actually Brian Downs of Chicago, Illinois, and he is riding his mule.
A children's favorite back at the turn of the century was Gentry Brothers' Equine and Canine Paradox. Today's posing dogs were trained by their owner, Kenneth Ray of Loganville, Wisconsin. He's not doing much posing. Well, I guess that you'd call it posing. They're having a good time. I think that would be a nice thing for a dog to do on a nice July afternoon. Just enjoy yourself. Cage Wagon, number 23. Again, Hagenbach Wallace shows used this until 1938. It was used in that circus for Terrell Jacobs' Great Fighting Lion Act. Wow. We have a small monkey inside from Willie's Game Farm. Yep, there he is. You can see
And what
him.
is he doing, Captain?
I don't know. He's just looking at the people. People are looking at him.
Or monkeying around.
Okay.
The music coming from the Cole Brothers Circus Music Wagon number 82 is coming from what's called a uniphon. Now, doing the honors is Milwaukee musician Richard Crabtree. In other great circus parades, this wagon has carried shaker chimes as well as other unusual musical instruments.
We have 6 ponies from Dean Baldwin of Alma, Wisconsin, pulling the wagon. This wagon appeared with the Cole Brothers and Robbins Brothers circuses in the 1930s. Say, I could have seen that in a circus parade. Listen to the music. Isn't it pretty?
Now, just a couple of units ago, we saw another of the Terrell Jacobs pony cage wagons. Now, this one is cage wagon number 24, and it's pulled by another team of ponies by Harold Moritz and has a leopard inside. And this is also from Wiley's Game Farm.
This parade feature honors the memory of Ephraim Williams, a Milwaukee shoeshine boy who worked hard and became a circus proprietor. The proprietor is being portrayed by Robert Barnett of Milwaukee.
This carriage and horse were provided by Paul Wazlewski of Eagle, Wisconsin. Now, Ephraim Williams began his career by doing small magic shows to attract customers. He used to shine shoes, and then he bought an animal and trained the horse to solve arithmetic problems. First horse calculator, I guess.
He did all right, too. Here's another unicorn hitch. This one, 3 Belgian horses by Holden Hankey of Cashville, Wisconsin. They're pulling the Ken Maynard Air Calliope wagon. Circus folks would say Calliope. It's number 116, a travel with the short-lived Ken Maynard Diamond K Ranch Wild West Show and Circus, believe it or not.
That's a long title, isn't it? This is an automatic roll-played air Calliope instrument, a feature of most circus parades since 1916. The air Calliope is not to be confused with the big steam Calliope. The difference is in the source of their whistle power.
Cage wagon number 14 is known as a cross cage because it was short enough to be loaded crosswise on a railroad flat car. Now, this made it possible for circuses with wagons of this size to carry many more of them.
Now, this comparatively small wagon, 9 feet 10 inches long, 6.5 feet wide, and 8 1/2 feet high, is being pulled by Robert Michaels horses from Freeport, Illinois.
This group of riders is portraying the Madras Light Cavalry of British India. Tales of bravery, of course, were romanticized by Rudyard Kipling. 10 Lancer Cavalry by Bar W. Stables of Eagle, Wisconsin, bringing this former parade attraction to life today.
Some more beautiful costumes.
Yep, costumes, costumes, costumes. Pageantry.
In this carriage, which is provided by Michael Crowley, he's done a lot of work for the circus parade this year. He's from Germantown, Wisconsin. Our Mr. Alan C. Hill. He's the proprietor of the Great American Circus, which is going on at the showgrounds here in Milwaukee. And they've been playing at the showgrounds since Wednesday, helping us all relive those days of the circus tent shows.
Okay, here we have another mirror bandwagon, the Lion and Mirror bandwagon. Number 1 is a jewel. built for Four Paws Circus in 1879. Now, imagine that. That's almost 110 years old, but it wasn't built as a bandwagon. It was originally a telescoping tableau. The figures were raised to proper viewing position for a parade and lowered again when loaded onto a circus train. The figurines on top depicted the story of St. George and the Dragon. Where were you, St. George, when I needed you before with all those dragons on the dragon wagon? But the theme figures were removed and it was made over into a bandwagon.
Fulfilling the role of the band today is the Old Mapleton Circus Band from Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. Mrs. Gail Pierce is the leader. Now pulling bandwagon number 1 are 8 Percherons by Harold Schumacher of Plainview, Minnesota. Let's listen.
Two Fjord horses pull this little surrey, a little buggy. Comes to us from Massachusetts, from Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts. Riding with Peter are the winners of a trivia contest sponsored by Milwaukee's morning newspaper, The Sentinel, in celebration of its 150th anniversary. Walter and June Foster are the winners. They get to ride in this wonderful Great Circus Parade.
This is the Twin Lion telescoping tableau wagon, and it's another from the Fawcett Circus. The Twin Lions refer to those two on the top that are life-size wood-carved lions, and you'll also note that wood-carved ladies adorn each of the sides, and there are 5 mirrors on each side right there. Maybe you can see your reflection.
Yeah, look at that. Wow, that's a huge wagon. It was originally 25 feet higher than it is now. Called a telescoping tableau because the center section can be raised and lowered. The wagon has been restored so that it can be fully extended to 17.5 feet. Not any higher because it has to get under many of the skywalks of Milwaukee that cross over the streets. And so you have to think about that when you run a Great Circus Parade. Imagine the original height was even taller, 25 feet.
Now, riding in total comfort today is Hippodon. In Hippodon number 28 is Miss Oklahoma. According to the skyboard on the wagon, she is the hippopotamus from the River Nile. The 8 Percheron horses from Aurora, Iowa are pulling this particular 5.5-ton wagon, and I bet that hippo is keeping cool inside, don't you think?
Well, she should be, because we provided a swimming pool, if you can believe it, a swimming pool right inside this wagon.
I like to call it a hippo condo.
Okay, it really is like a hippo condo. It's absolutely beautiful. It was built in Iowa, that wagon, in 1929, and it's the only one of its kind in existence today.
And let's hope she's not a hypochondriac.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Captain.
Oh, tell me about this section.
Now we want to hail the Grand Marshal saluting our nation, and this is a Grand March. Its heritage and the Constitution will be saluted in our next section. 2 soldiers of the Revolution are carrying the banners. All decked out in red, white, and blue, of course. This is the Our Country tableau, which is an exact copy of the original, which unfortunately has vanished. The original was built in 1902 for Barnum and Bailey on its return to this country from a European tour. It was created to emphasize the glad to be back from Europe message.
And another name for the unit is the President's Wagon. Depicted on the unit are Grover Cleveland, Teddy Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, U.S. Grant, George Washington, all displayed with the Goddess of Liberty. She's being portrayed by Amy Renard, a writer for the Milwaukee Sentinel. The Circus World Museum had quite a time finding lookalikes for all those American presidents riding on the President's Wagon.
But they searched high and low, and they found them.
Hey, listen, the folks are really enjoying it here, aren't they?
They are having a great time, and it's a real testament. I mean, this parade has been going for a number of years, and each year the crowd gets bigger and better.
And it really is, as I said almost a couple of hours ago, it's American history on parade. I'm not old enough, I think, to have ever seen a circus parade. The last one was in the 30s. Well, I guess I could have seen it as a young child. But they had pretty much disappeared by the time I was a young boy. So there are very few people in this nation of ours who have enjoyed the circus parade. And now everybody, thanks to the Great Circus Parade on the streets of Milwaukee, can enjoy this wonderful parade.
Come on.
Ernie, how are you? Tova, so nice to see you.
Oh,
Great to be here.
Great.
How are you, Captain? Good
I'm
to see
fine,
you, sir.
thank you. So good to see you once again.
Ah, bless your heart.
As anyone who knows the Great Circus Parade knows, Ernest Borgnine and Tova are just an institution, part of this parade in Milwaukee. So nice to have you back again, both of you.
You know, Captain, to be here and be part of this, I believe that the whole country, if they could just share in the spirit we feel here, what a great land we would have, huh?
Absolutely right. The spirit of this parade, as the president said in his telegram today, is the spirit of America. Ernie, you know, you once commented on the Johnny Carson show some years ago that one role you had never played was that of a clown.
That's right.
And you got a call right away saying, how about being a clown in the Great Circus
And
Parade?
I've been one ever since.
Have you ever regretted it for a moment?
Never. As a matter of fact, speaking of presidents, I propose that if Ronald Reagan, our dear president, were to put on a clown suit along with Gorbachev, we'd have a hell of a better world to live in.
We'd have the summit of all times, would we not?
You better believe it.
Thank you, Ernie. I'll let you go back to your people. Tova, so good to see you
Thank you,
again.
sir.
Pleasure, Captain. Thank you.
God bless you.
Good seeing you, too.
Enjoy the circus now.
Thank you. We shall.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Oh, what a wonderful feature of this parade. We've seen the 4th U.S. Army Band passing by us. They're playing spectacular music.
Now marching is the 4th United States Army Marching Band, as you mentioned, and it takes really something to get into this particular unit. There are
Yeah,
31 members, and they must go through a really strenuous audition.
This is the Betsy Ross float that we just looked at, portraying, of course, Betsy Ross, who stitched the flag in time. One of the most popular American paintings is that of Washington crossing the Delaware. Now, the authenticity of the event itself has often been questioned, but the popularity of the painting is unquestioned. And here it is, a live tableau. In other words, people actually taking the part of the characters in the painting.
Now the costumes worn by the men in the living tableau match those in the painting that we see on the side.
Representing the United States Air Force, because we've had the Coast Guard, we've had the Navy, we've had the Marines, and we've had the Army. Here we have the Air Force Band of the Midwest under the direction of Major William Graves, the 35-piece 505 Air Force Band stationed at Chanute Air Force Base in Illinois. Traces its beginnings way back before the Air Force itself, back to 1941, the All-Army Air Corps. Performs for community events such as the Great Circus Parade, and they support military activities for several Midwest Air Force bases, and they're a ceremonial concert band.
And here's the Statue of Liberty float number 208. It's a salute to, of course, America's most famous lady, now completely refurbished as a symbol of freedom to those approaching our shores.
And of course, we all enjoyed, as a nation, the great celebration of that refurbishing of Lady Liberty last year. Colleen Burtz portrays Miss Liberty. You know, she had to practice for many hours so that she would be able to hold her arm for the entire 3.5-mile parade route.
Wow,
Not easy.
Not easy at all, and she's to be commended. In keeping with the period of history being recreated today, around 1920, Lady Liberty's honor guard include men costumed in uniforms from various eras of our country's history. And pulling the float are 4 Clydesdale, beautiful, beautiful horses by Louis and Dean Schmidt of Kewaskum, Wisconsin.
Colleen, you're doing a wonderful job holding
Absolutely.
that Statue of Liberty aloft. These 2 llamas are presented by Milwaukee businessman George Chester. I don't know,
They're having a good time. Look at them romping.
yeah, I think the fellow pulling the one on the left is having a good time. He's on roller skates. I should say leading, not really pulling.
They are beautiful animals.
We really
Now, the
have-
lady pulling them has the right idea. She's using roller skates.
Yeah, I think she does. She's really enjoying it. We've seen so many different animals in the show today. We have seen horses and llama, and we've seen ponies, and we saw some oxen.
Dogs.
Dogs, of course, that's right. And, of course, what do you think of when you think of a circus?
I think of elephants.
Yeah, what would a circus be without elephants? They're coming along, folks. Just hold your horses, as they would say. Hold your horses, here come the elephants.
Absolutely.
Sure, in the
Important
early
time.
days when the elephants came along, the horses were terrified of the elephants. So that expression, hold your horses, comes from the day when there would be an elephant crier way out in front of the elephants, and he would warn everybody, not circus horses, but the horses that pull the milk wagon, the horses that you rode into town today on top of. And the circus crier, the elephant crier, would say, hold your horses, here come the elephants. And so that was a very, very important part of any circus parade. So hold your horses, folks. We will indeed have the elephants for you in the great circus parade on the streets of Milwaukee.
You know, Captain, a lot of people think that elephants are really so very smart, but they are no more intelligent than any other animal. And in training them, it takes the same amount of training that you would, say, a lion or a tiger that you have to devote to them. But interestingly enough, there are particular elephants that aren't really good for training. The African elephants.
That's
are
right.
not very suited for training.
So the Asiatic
like
elephant, commonly the Indian elephant, is the one most used.
Our next unit is the Marinette High School Marching Band, and leading them off is Paul Luring, William Dipple, and Ann Busher. And they're, of course, from Wisconsin, Marinette, Wisconsin. And today, in keeping with the mandate to play only traditional circus music as part of the parade, they are going to be playing a Sousa collection.
The circus parade carries all kinds of elements, elements to hear, elements to see. So it appeals to the sense of sight, the sense of sound, and of course, if you are actually on the streets of Milwaukee today, the sense of smell, because it does have circus smells, wonderful
smells. It certainly
does. None other like it. Here they are, the regal ships of the desert.
Deliver.
Oh, well, these aren't the elephants.
Oh,
these are the camels. Oh, come on, Joe. You knew the difference between the camels and the elephants. They're provided by David Hale of Cape Girardeau in the wonderful state of Missouri. Aren't they wonderful? Look at them. They always look like they're chewing gum, don't they? They're always moving their mouth.
Now, are these dromedary?
Oh boy, I was afraid you were going to ask.
Well, which one has one has one hump, one has two?
I was afraid you were going to ask that question after the first question.
50-50 right, I guess.
Yes.
Let's not even try to guess.
Wave to the camels, everybody. Have a good time.
You know, now it's considered nostalgia and tradition, but back in the 1900s, it was a necessity for someone to ride ahead of the elephants, and that's where they mentioned and yelled out, hold your horse.
That's right. As we were saying before, you had a rider, the elephants were coming along. I mean, this was really important because I mean, you could cause horses to stampede. You could cause injury to persons and property. And so it was a very important thing to do. Take a person and put him on horseback and let him ride out in front of the elephants and say, hold your horses, the elephants are coming. Or maybe he said, hold your horse. I don't know. It was horses.
Well, if there were two, it'd be horses, but it really prevented the elephants from charging. And I won't ask you, how do you stop an elephant from charging?
I won't either. If he has a credit card, he can go ahead and do it. Here they are.
You said it, I didn't.
The elephants.
These are the mounted elephant criers.
Yes, the elephants marching trunk to tail in the traditional parade manner. Their attendants close by. And that Hoda high up in the air, carrying a harem princess.
And today's elephants were provided by Bobby Moore of New Baltimore, Michigan, and the Great American Circus from Sarasota, Florida, which, by the way, is performing here in Milwaukee for a few days after its train trip from Baraboo, Wisconsin. They unloaded the particular wagons and actually put on a circus parade right here in the city at the showgrounds.
Oh, and look at again the beauty of the costumes for the elephants.
Well, you know, Captain, up in Baraboo, old traditions like this continue of making costumes for elephants, and an art that just isn't found anywhere else. But in Baraboo, Baraboo, Wisconsin, at the Great Circus Museum. All the traditions continue.
The Algie Barnes Circus Elephant Tableau Wagon making its first appearance in this Milwaukee Spectacular. Actually, it's the first time it's been seen anywhere since 1920. It's being drawn by an elephant hitch by Bobby Moore of New Baltimore, Michigan. Look at that, the two elephants pulling the wagon.
And the vehicle being pulled by the elephants is both old and new. Now, the original Barnes elephant was built in Venice, California, somewhere around 1920. It was one of only 3 such vehicles created for American circuses. The Al G. Barnes Circus used its elephant tableau wagon for a few years until it just kind of dropped out of sight.
And then the
Look at
carvings
that.
turned up in 1939 and eventually found their way to the Great Circus World Museum, where the craftsmen working from old photos built an identical wagon. Boy, did they do a job. And seeing the results today. The 8 Percheron horses are pulling a nice wagon now, Joe.
This is the 8 Percheron horses, and they're owned by William Farmer of Eaton, Ohio, and they're fully challenged to master the massive weight of this American musical monster, the very hallmark of the American circus.
The American Steam Calliope, or I might say Calliope, and you'd say, oh, you're mispronouncing it. No, that's the way the circus folks said it. Calliope, the traditional finale of the American Circus Street Parades, and so it is today. It originated with Barnum and Bailey in 1903, was converted to a steam calliope by Cole Brothers in 1940. Hubert Head of Detroit is playing, but he has to wear ear muffs while he's playing the Calliope in the
Let's
parade.
give a listen.
Look at the steam.
And wrapping up this great circus parade is the salute to the circus parade, and it's the signature wagon number 200, and this is the wagon that says, thanks for being with us, thanks for enjoying the circus parade, and thanks for coming to Baraboo, Wisconsin, and seeing the Circus World Museum. They're inviting everyone to come up to Baraboo, Wisconsin. So I know that if you're ever in this area, you can't miss that.
Well, I've just got to tell you, Joe Smith is absolutely right. You have got to get to the Circus World Museum because you'll see so much of what you've seen on the streets of Milwaukee today and so much more. If you have the slightest inkling, the slightest interest in the American circus, a great tradition in America, you've got to get to the wonderful museum and enjoy the circus world that has been recreated by the great Circus World Museum in Baraboo, Wisconsin. Wisconsin, the home of the American circus. We heard the Calliope, or the Calliope, as the circus folk would say, and we followed the Calliope out to the circus grounds. Of course, in those days, they didn't have the modern instruments they have today that
No,
the Milwaukee Sanitation Department has to clean up after the circus parade, but a very, very important element of a circus parade it is.
Absolutely.
So, we have really enjoyed watching the Great Circus Parade and enjoyed it as the people on the streets of Milwaukee have today, and we hope the people watching on the facilities of our public television network have enjoyed it. And we particularly are happy that the Great Circus Parade was seen by the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service throughout the world. A great American event to be enjoyed by all of us.
And absolutely, Captain. And I want to thank you for such a wonderful time, for being here in Milwaukee and sharing your talents with us and all of the country for this great circus parade. And we look forward to another great parade next year.
Okay, let's see if we can't get to the Circus World Museum where it all began.
The Great Circus Parade comes to you through a grant from Strong Fund.